How are you? Hello, hello. Hey, here, let me pin a message so that everybody knows what we're doing. It's Sabaa Tahir in here. In just a minute. Wings of Ebony. Spoiler free. We're going to have a spoiler free chat. Available. Post. All right. Hey, yo. I'm trying to bring in Sabaa. Let's see if we can get this to work. How are you all doing? There you are.
How are you? Sorry.
Good.
Fixing. It's so nice to see you. Yay for everybody who is here. I am so excited to talk about this book, guys.
Me too.
I'm so excited.
Can you see me okay?
Yes, I can see you well. Sorry, I know it's like a little close to my face. I'll try to move it back so you guys can't see that first. Because really, who wants to say that? See that? Thank you for asking me to join you in this chat. Like, I'm really excited about talking about Wings. So, shall I just launch into it?
Yes.
Okay.
Should we do maybe like quick introductions? I can introduce you. This is Sabaa Tahir, author of the New York Times best-selling series Ember in the Ashes, and my mutual ice cream obsessed dear friend. I'm so happy to have you here. And I am J.Elle, the author of Wings of Ebony, which was the YA book club pick for February and what we'll be talking about tonight.
That was an excellent introduction. Thank you very much. Okay, so this has been like a whirlwind couple of months for you. Wings came out. It was an instant New York Times and national bestseller. You are Barnes & Noble's February book club pick. Like, how does that feel? Like, how are you feeling right now? Like, what's going through your head? Tell us.
Let me know. Am I choppy? Let me know if I'm choppy because I can make my internet better if I need to. But
okay.
No, I mean, it's been a whirlwind, to be really honest. I didn't expect any of this. Obviously, it's exciting. It's a dream. It's been fun. I have loved connecting with readers. I think that has been the most amazing part of this entire experience, like writing the book, but then having people actually read it and connect with it has been so cool. My favorite thing to do actually is to have these book club discussions. So, because we really get to talk about the meat of the story, and it's just been a wild ride, and I'm so grateful. And I can't wait to see what the world thinks of the sequel, which is very much in the works.
I was just going to say that's going to be one of my questions. So I will get to that because I want to know like how the sequel is going and how you were feeling about it. I think a lot of writers in the audience are often really curious about like what it is like to write a sequel. So I will definitely get to that. I want to give a chance to people who don't know anything about Wings of Ebony to kind of get a sense of what the story is. So when did you first think of this story, and tell us a little bit about the premise for it for those of us who don't know about the book?
Sure. So Wings of Ebony is an urban fantasy novel. Twinsies. It's an urban fantasy novel about a teen from an inner city, a Black teen specifically from an inner city community who basically travels to a magical island because she's taken there by a father that she doesn't know. I
Sorry, I'm
know.
like distracting
It's
because I like
so
took the
pretty.
cover off. I'm like, so pretty.
It's
Okay.
so pretty.
Sorry, please continue.
And no, you're good. And so anyway, so she is there sort of figuring out her identity and figuring out where she fits in a world where she doesn't look like anyone. There's a lot of discrimination against people who are half human, half God. And so it's just her grappling with that and sort of finding her footing. Within that, she part of what she needs to do is lean into her ancestors' magic to actually protect her community back home. It's very much a page turner. It has a budding love triangle. It is written in one of, I don't know if I can say this, but it's one of my favorite voices I've ever read because I just worked really hard to make Ruth feel like someone that I knew and that I talked to. And like, I worked really hard at the voice. So I love Ruth's voice. I love her just unapologeticness. And it's just a fun story. It has a lot of sort of relevant and timely themes, but it's also just an incredibly thrilling page turner, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one of the things that I love the most about the book is that it felt like a commentary on society, but not a commentary that was hard to read. It felt more like you were sort of opening a door for people who might not be familiar with something that Rue would be dealing with, right? And kind of letting us sort of see everything that she would be going through and what is happening inside of her. So you said this book is like your favorite voice that you've read and that you've written in. So I'm curious, like when you were writing the book, who was your favorite character to write? Obviously the book is from, Rue's perspective, but like who did you enjoy writing when they walked on the page? Who were you like, yes, this is like my favorite type of scene to write?
So that is definitely Miss Leola. And I'll tell you why.
Her.
But before I tell you why, something you need to know about the exclusive edition for those of you tuning in is the exclusive edition has Miss Leola's pound cake recipe in the back.
What?
And you know what? About the reason that that's a big deal is because Miss Leola is very much modeled after my grandmother. I named her after my deceased grandmother and gave her the personality of my grandmother who raised me. And so to get that recipe, I had to humbly beg for many weeks because it is a secret recipe that she does not share. And so all of the cousins and aunties just went wild when they realized that Amelia had finally released her secret pound cake recipe to be in this book. So anyway, definitely Miss
She
Leola.
must love you.
I think she does.
You must be a favorite grandchild.
But no, it was fun to write her because I would say for many reasons. And one of the more unique reasons is because I was doing a lot of rereading in the copy edit phase. I probably read this book 4 times in 2020. And we were in the middle of a pandemic and I couldn't go see my grandmother. I couldn't go hug her and talk to her. And so to be able to really just like live vicariously through Rue, who's very much being loved on and served in the way that my grandmother serves me, was the sweetest thing in the world. It was very sentimental.
Well, food is such a language of love, I think, for so many brown people, right? I think that there are times where I knew that my mother or, my family, whoever they were, they might have been quiet or they might not have been talking so much, but I knew the love was there because they cooked me an amazing meal or they made me a treat or, whatever. So I think that kind of makes it extra special. So in relation to that, how has your family, your community, how have they responded to your success and to this book being out in the world?
It's interesting because I wrote this for my community and it's received so much love all over the world, even for people who did not grow up where I grew up or people who are not from the South. There's a lot of stuff in this book that's sort of Houston specific, which I think makes the world building just feel that much more immersive. But it's been fascinating to see people from all over the country and even all over the world relate to Rue and relate to the connectedness and togetherness in her community. I actually just found out right before this live, and I didn't have time to reply at length, but I will when we finish chatting, that this week a librarian at the high school in my neighborhood, because I grew up in 3rd Ward, which is the same neighborhood where George Floyd grew up, Um, the librarian at the high school there yesterday or a couple days ago put copies of Wings of Ebony in George Floyd's niece's hands. And when I wrote the book, like I meant for it to get to my community and to reach young me and my little sisters and kids where I'm from. But to see it happening is just like, oh my goodness, RIP my eyeliner. Like it is like it is the most meaningful experience in the world, because I do believe, and I say this all the time because I mean it, really trying to conserve my eyeliner here. I say this all the time because I mean it, but I truly believe that if Rue, the main character in my book, can make a kid believe that they're unstoppable, she can change the world.
Yes. Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
that's what I'm trying to do.
Yes. Yeah. No, and I think that that's an amazing thing to want to do with a book, and that's why so many of us are in, you know, the business of writing, is because, you know, we do hope that these stories that we tell change the world, even if it's a little bit, even if it's one kid picking it up and seeing themselves in a book where they've never seen that before, or seeing someone they know in a book, or just seeing having their eyes open to a different world and a different way of thinking. So I think that's awesome. As you wrote this book, like, what surprised you? What were the things that, you know, they came out of left field, whether it's, you know, plot related or just the way that one writes or the community? Like, what things surprised you?
You know, the biggest surprise, and I know we're keeping this fairly spoiler free, but the biggest surprise, to be really transparent, is when I was rewriting it, because I've rewritten this book. This is like draft 19. Perseverance, tenacity.
Exactly.
But I was rewriting the book, and I got to this moment where Rue realized that her best friend might not see things the way that she does.
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
it hit me, like, I knew what story I was writing. I knew the themes that were going to be in the story. But I realized in that moment when I was writing that scene that I had to grapple with allyship and privilege, which I didn't realize that was the theme I was putting into my book intentionally. But it was necessary in the situation that Rue found herself in. And so I'll never forget, like, writing this and going, okay, so then this is going to happen, this plot point, and then this plot point. And then it was like this record scratch moment. I was like, nope, between those plot points, we have this very serious thing to address because it's real. And so I had to, like, dig into some heavier themes. And it's probably one of the most moving parts of the book, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So a question for probably, like, from like a lot of writers will hopefully relate to this, but I think in general people love to know, like, what's a day in the life of J.Elle? Like, you know, how do you sort of approach writing? Is it something, are you very disciplined, or are you sort of like me, kind of wandering from story to story? Like, I'm just curious.
So, you know, my process is different with each book I'm finding. I will say that I like to write around the same time every day. So if I start writing in the morning, then that becomes my routine, usually for that book. And then if I start on a night cycle, that's my routine for that book. I like to try to get down an entire scene in one sitting. That does not always work, which means I'm sitting there stubbornly not doing anything else because I'm determined to get through a scene. But you know, I used to be a pantser. Like, I used to just sort of explore the story through the character's eyes and see where it takes me. But now I like to write a full synopsis before I start drafting, to have an idea of the intersection of the plot and character arcs, and just to make sure that everything feels a bit cohesive. So I am sort of an outliner, but then once I get into the book, you know, the characters take over sometimes, and I'm veering from my outline. But yeah, I mean, it's still a fairly exploratory process for me, but I do like to at least outline the major sort of plot points of the story, like what's going to happen in the middle, how will the story pivot, and then what's going to happen at the very end, and then sort of like, how am I establishing this character in the beginning, who they are and why they're going on this journey. I think those are sort of the fundamental pieces that I start with.
Okay. And how, like, I love the relationship, for example, between Rue and her sister, and between, like, Rue and Brie. Like, is that something that you kind of have set in your mind beforehand, these relationships, or is that something that you kind of let grow as you write?
You know, that's interesting. I would like to pretend like that was something I wrote out ahead of time, but I'm not that smart. So what ends up happening is I get very deep into my characters' heads, which is one of the reasons why I don't like stopping in the middle of the scene if I can help it. Because when I'm in the zone, I'm very deeply in the zone. And so when I was in Rue's head, similar to the issue she has with her best friend later in the book, I sort of try to imagine what is the organic, natural flow from here. I try not to let my brain become too obsessed with the next plot point and sort of like sit in the moment of that character's emotions and experiences and figure out what needs to happen. So I knew in the very beginning, and this is not a spoiler because the first chapter has been revealed by Tor since forever ago.
Right,
But
right.
so when Rue, I knew she was going to try to save her sister from this car accident. But like the weight of what it would be like seeing her sister for the first time after so long, coming back on the anniversary of her mother's murder, like that's heavy. And so I think when I'm writing, it's a mix of sort of me having an idea of what the relationship is, and then me finding a way to put myself in that character's experience, truly imagining myself as Rue, truly imagining the moments where I didn't see a family member for a year and what that felt like to see them again for the first time, down to like what it felt like to hug them or like touch their fingers. And like I tried to think through all those little pieces of it to make the reading, the emotions on the page really come through.
Yeah, yeah. And what about the character of Brie? I thought she was such a fascinating character. There were moments where I would feel like, you know, I could almost sense like Rue's occasional frustration with her, and it was really well drawn out. And so I'm sort of curious as to why you decided to put a character like Brie in the book, because you don't actually see sort of that push and pull within friendships as much in books as I think that it probably warrants, like the way we see it in life, right? So I'm just wondering where that inspiration came from.
You know, that's a great question. So Brie is interesting. The early draft of this book, Rue had two friends in Ghizon, Brie and Blaze. Blaze didn't make the cut, but Brie did. And ultimately, I wanted Rue to have an anchor in the magical world because I wanted her to have some sort. I didn't think it would be realistic for her to go to a place and live there and not make a single friend, not find anyone that she has anything in common with. And I saw a great opportunity to parallel my friendships with people in the real world and sort of the challenges that can exist there and the incredible loyalty and love that can as well. Especially if we come from different walks of life, be it different ethnicities or just different social classes or different backgrounds and upbringings. I saw a lot of opportunity to really parallel real world relationships through that. But I think she started as an anchor to the magical world because Rue is new to the magical world and she only knows so much from being there for a year. Brie grew up there. So I wanted her to sort of have that tour guide, if you will, to sort of help her feel acquainted. And I wanted to make sure that she had some connection there because that felt, you know, realistic.
Yeah, yeah. So last question before we go into audience questions, guys. There should be like a question mark, a place where you can insert questions, and then J.Elle is going to be going through those. And
we have a few, but if you have more, add more questions.
Yes, but if you have more, add more questions. We're going to spend a few minutes doing that. So last question for you. How is book 2 going?
Ooh,
Can I read it yet? That's what I really want to know.
I did find out I'm going to have arcs, which I know is not always a thing for sequels.
Awesome.
So I found that out a couple days ago, and I actually just found out the release date too.
Okay.
So the sequel's going great. It is into copy edits.
Wow.
It has a cover. It's still being tweaked, but it has a cover.
Okay.
The cover is going to blow your mind, Sabaa.
So excited.
It's so good. And I feel like Wings has one of the most beautiful covers I've ever seen.
It's
Taj
stunning.
Francis on Instagram is the mastermind behind this beautiful cover. And so I was like a little nervous. I'm like, how are we going to top the cover in book 1 with book 2? So it's going well. I'm excited because book 2 is so different from book 1. I think writing a book after Wings of Ebony very, very well could have been one book, like the way that I'd originally written it. But I realized that there were more themes that I wanted to tackle, and it would be better explored in 2 separate novels so that I can adequately focus on both.
Yeah.
And so it was intimidating writing a sequel to a book like Wings because I feel like Wings is just so different from other things that I've read. But I took it in a different direction, and I think it's going to be interesting. And my hope is that it resonates just as much, but just in different ways with readers. The love triangle amps up quite a bit. So, you know, you need to know where your loyalties stand. I plan to test all of your loyalties, so be ready. But yeah, no, it's good. It's going good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. My loyalty, you know this because I have talked to you about this, but my loyalty stands with Rue. I'm like, Rue, you don't need any of these people. Like, you're good. You don't need any of these people. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you for questions.
Yes.
I saw someone say hashtag Team Julius. That's my secondary team.
The ship teams are loyal, let me tell you. Okay, so here's a question for both of us, more about the writing process, which I like. I want you to know that there are ship war questions in there, like tons of them. If you want to know what our team loyalty is. Okay, so the question, oh, that's right. I need to read it out because you can't see it, right?
No, I cannot. Sorry.
Okay, it says, how do we outline? So can you talk a little bit about what your outlining process is like, since I sort of mentioned what mine was?
Yeah, so I'm similar. Like, I do a mixture of outlining and sort of planning. George R. R. Martin calls it being an architect versus being a gardener. So an architect obviously plans everything, and a gardener sort of plays in the dirt. So what I usually do is I kind of get a sense of the structure that I want. I answer a lot of questions for myself at the very beginning of, like, who is this story about? You know, what is kind of is there a moral imperative in the story? You know, who are the main characters? Whose point of view is it going to be from? All of that stuff. And then I kind of build from there. So I figure out those big tentpole moments, like, you know, what's happening in the middle of the story? What is this character's arc? Who do they start out as, and who do they end as? I might not have the details, like, is it going to be a battle? Is it going to be a jailbreak? I might not have that, but I have the internal journey and the emotional journey. And knowing that really helps me figure out, like, exactly what's going to happen.
I agree. I think the internal arc, the end character's internal goals for me always bring the character to life, to be really honest. Like, it just tells you so much about where they come from and what they want and, like, the areas they need to grow. And I think that I didn't always approach my stories that way. Sometimes I approached it with, well, what's the world building and magic, and what would be fun ways to portray that. But characters are what pull me into stories, and, like, characters are my favorite thing to write. And so I found that the books that I've written since Wings in particular, I've focused a lot more heavily on that, and, like, mapping out internal obstacle, internal goal, internal stakes first, and then all of those things externally. So very similar. Yes. I'm working on a new project now, and I'm the part of the book that I'm most excited about, because there's a lot you don't know in the beginning, right? But it really is just how this character is going to grow. Like, that's what's pulling me through it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That was such a good question. I'm curious, as a follow-up, just because I'm nosy, do you outline and then re-outline? Like,
I do the one outline and then I just rewrite. So I usually won't re-outline, because if I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, I need to rethink something, usually it's because the book is done. There is a draft of it, and I just need to kind of go in and mess with it. So, I mean, I've made huge changes to books where I've, like, torn out, you know, an entire middle of a book and rewritten the whole thing, or, you know, I've done stuff like that, but I don't really usually re-outline.
Interesting. Okay. I will sometimes, not necessarily re-outline, but I will, depending on how much work it needs, rewrite a synopsis, like, even if it's just 2 pages, to make sure that all of the things are sort of clicking into place. And thus far, I've been able to send those to my editor, which is really helpful before I start a massive revision, because they can sort of look at everything and see how I'm planning to line it up, and that's really helpful.
Yes.
Here's a question from Lisa Springer, which is, Lisa is a writer. I know who Lisa is. Okay. And she says, can you talk about your approach to drafting a sequel? And I thought we could both answer this if you want.
Yeah, I would love to hear your answer to that.
Well, you are the pro series drafter here. But I will tell you, I was looking at how can I wanted to take Rue where she is, and I certainly wanted to start book 2 in a surprising place. Book 1 ends in a certain way, and you sort of think you know what book 2 is about, and it's true to some degree, but, like, the way you get there, I wanted it to be a surprise. And so I knew I wanted to start the book with a in a surprising way. So there's that. Just so that it has its own sort of punch at the beginning and momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, I wanted to challenge my character to grow in a way that's not obvious for her. Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, we come through book one, we know who Rue is. She's fiery, she's passionate, she's all of these things. And so what I didn't want Rue to feel like is perfect and like she couldn't, you know, like she is a heroine that can't fall. And so it was important for me to show that, like, as powerful as a heroine is, they can still make mistakes. They still have room to grow. And so for me, it was figuring out which area do I want to grow her in. And I wanted to specifically look at, in book two, oh gosh, that would kind of be a spoiler, so I won't say that. But I also wanted to play up the romance because I didn't spend a lot of time on it in book one. And that's just one of my favorite things about YA books. So for me, it was a matter of just, it's like a separate recipe. Like they're both cookies, but in one cookie I'm putting chocolate chips and in the other one I'm putting like peanut butter chips. Yeah. So it was just me figuring out what things I wanted to explore that I thought made sense, but that were uniquely interesting on their own.
Yeah, I love that you used a cookie analogy. I'm going to use a much more boring analogy, which is a mountain analogy. So I feel like every book, whether it's within a series or outside of a series or a different genre or different age group, every book is a mountain. And you might know how to climb mountains. You might like have a method that you use to climb mountains, but you don't know how to climb that specific mountain, right? And nobody has ever climbed that mountain before. So there's no real guidance for how to climb that mountain. There's no like markers or like base camps or anything, right? You have to figure it out as you do it. So that's how I feel about writing sequels, is that I sort of walk into it and I go, okay, new mountain, but I've climbed mountains before, so I can do this one too. And then I basically just ask myself some of the questions you ask. And then we've talked about this a little bit just when we've talked on the phone, but I asked myself about impact. What is the impact that this character wants to make or plans to make, or that I want them to make on the world? And how over the course of, for example, the Ember series, how that impact either increased, decreased, changed, shifted. You know, I think a lot of people at the beginning of the Ember series sort of thought that the arcs would be traditional, like that the arc of sort of savior would go to Elias because he's the guy. And in fact, that arc doesn't go to Elias. It belongs to Laia. And Elias's arc is very, very different. And it's actually much more internal. It's much more about sort of forgiveness and also accepting what kind of your destiny is in this world. So I think that for me, sequels are very much about that and figuring out, like you said, what do I want for these characters emotionally? Because we do write about young people, and so there is so much change in their lives. And I think that like you can meet somebody who's 16 or 17, and if you meet them 4 years later, they're a completely different person.
Absolutely.
That is a very common. I know that I changed significantly from when I was 17 to when I was like 20 or 21. So that's the other thing I try to look at is how are these characters changing? How are they growing? What feels right? What feels realistic? All of that to me is what goes into writing a sequel and going to new places. I also think that's really important with a sequel.
Yes.
Like physically going somewhere new and like getting to explore a new place is something that I personally love about sequels. So I try to put that in my own sequels as well.
I agree. I should have mentioned that. And book two takes place, 98% of it takes place in Ghizon.
Which is awesome, and I cannot wait for.
So you do get a lot more in the magical world, which I think makes it, again, like makes that book sort of feel like its own thing, which I think is important. Yeah. So it doesn't feel like more of the same. That was a great answer. Okay, let's see. I definitely want to do that answer, but I'm going to say a question, but I'm going to save that one to the end. Do you create playlists for your books? I can create one after the fact. I cannot listen to music while I write. I have written a battle scene listening to music, and that worked. But other than that, I can't. Not at the same time.
Okay. So I'm the opposite. I make these massive, massive playlists when I write. Most of them are up on my website somewhere. I don't know where. Good luck finding them. I think they're on the blog. Um, but I make these huge playlists, and for me, it's like I usually use iTunes just because I've gotten used to it, and I like hate changing like my methods. So people keep being like, get on Spotify, and I'm like, I know I really need to join Spotify, but I just haven't done it yet. So I make these playlists, and then what I do is in one of the categories, like one of the descriptive categories, instead of putting like, album year or whatever, I change it to character, and I put in who the characters are that particular song is for. So, this song by the Zolas is a, Elias and Laya song, or this Fiona Apple is totally a Helene song, right? And then when I write those characters' chapters, I will usually find their portion of the playlist, and I will go into it and I will listen to it. And that's especially helpful for me when I do the emotional work that's required of a character, when I'm getting into their head, when I'm trying to sort of show those emotional stakes. Having music is a huge part of my ability to tap into who they are. So I find it like really helpful. And I have like for my current edits, I have a big playlist, and it's so different from Ember, but at the same time, like there are songs that double because I can see that like I hit the same themes, because clearly like I have to like work through some issues, right? So it's like you can see it in like the music I listen to.
Okay,
Yeah.
No, I love that. I do. I love that. And I actually love listening to playlists for books that I love. I think that's a really fun way to like make the book stick with me.
Yeah.
When I'm writing deeply emotional scenes, because there's a lot of deeply emotional scenes in Wings of Ebony, I actually need complete silence. Which I have 3 small children. Not a common thing.
Not easy to come by. Yeah.
No, but I actually need really complete silence, and I haven't figured out exactly why that is, but it's a common thing. Every single time I'm writing something really deeply emotionally, I need to be like immersed and like not like no dogs barking, like nothing.
Right.
There's a question about what did the word count of Wings of Ebony end up being as a final book? I believe it was about 92,000, 91 or 92,000.
Yeah.
In what way do I relate to Rue? Feel free to answer this too, Sabaa. How do I relate to? I mean, Rue is so much of me, to be honest. I relate to her on so many levels. Like, being forced to exist somewhere where you're the only person that looks like you. That was my life in private school, and I went to a predominantly white institution for college. In my college classes, same thing. Felt my first job, same thing. I felt a lot like Rue felt in Ghizon, obviously minus the magic. And I also resonate with her. I grew up with a very not so great relationship with my dad. He was very absent. And so exploring that on the page was very cathartic, to be honest, because so much of Rue's frustration there was relatable. And then of course her love for her community and like the way that she rides for her people, and like everything down to like old Jesse with his shopping cart full of cans, because he turns them in at the recycle place to get money, and that's how he feeds himself. The old Jesse is somebody from my neighborhood. Like, in the can place, my grandpa and I used to collect cans, and we used to turn them in, and that would be my pocket change, my grandpa would call it.
I did that with my parents.
So like there's so many pieces of who Rue is. I always say like I am Rue. And I mean that. Like so much of me is her.
Yeah. I related to Rue a lot. Like I saw a lot of sort of characteristics of her that were familiar to me. A lot of the stuff that you've actually mentioned, I actually grew up in a town that was very isolated and almost predominantly white. Like I think we were for a long time the only Pakistanis in the town. And the, like there was a very, very tiny Muslim population in the town too. So I definitely related to that. But one of the things that I love about Rue is actually one of the things that I think a lot of people used to kind of look down on in books or look down on in characters. And that was that Rue is mad. She's angry. Yeah. And I really loved that about her, because I don't think we have enough angry characters in books. Like they're going through, like she had a reason to be angry and a reason to be upset. And I really love that you turned her anger and her frustration into something really positive. Like you turned it into action and you turned it into her sort of finding a way forward for this community, but you didn't dull her anger. Like you didn't weaken it or make it toothless. And I really loved that about the book, because I just feel like anger sort of given this bad rap. And I don't really think it's always deserved. I think anger can be very useful at times. So I love that about Rue.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I haven't seen a Black heroine, and I don't think I've seen any heroine of color be able, like, centered in a YA narrative that sort of holds that anger like that. I can think of more like repressed anger, but like the way that like Katniss is fiery, like I've never seen that with a Black or brown person. And so Rue definitely is that for me. And I think that it's validating. I also wanted to sort of dispel this idea that these kids who walk around with like armor on, you know, figuratively, and they just seem angry and upset all the time. There's so much beneath that.
Yeah, exactly.
When you really see a person and love a person, you're looking beneath all of that.
Yep.
Rue is angry and powerful and unapologetic. But she's also incredibly vulnerable and
she's full of love.
Yes,
like, the love that she has for her family, for her community is like, and that's like, that is why I love that about her. It's so layered, you know, and I just thought it was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's probably one of my favorite parts about her character. Okay, I'll do one more and then we will wrap up because I know we're getting close to 6:45. Let's see. I'll do two more. Who is your favorite character other than Rue? And that's for both of us. And then can you recommend any reads for some of us who loved our books?
Let's see. I really did love Brie. I really did think that she was a great character. I was happy that Rue had a friend, you know, like who was just like a good friend like that. So I really loved Brie.
I would say, because I'm very private about my ship loyalties, so I don't want to give anything away. So I would say, other than my ship preference, I really loved Brie too. I also really loved Rue's mother, which I know was not a character on the page, but a lot of who Rue is and the way she processes things and the way she responds to things and even just the way she sees the world and engages with it is so shaped by the way that her mother raised her and loved her. And I think for her to not have been on the page, and this is another plug for the exclusive edition from Barnes & Noble, there is actually some character art in the back of this book. It's a sketch of Naomi, which is Rue's mother. And there's actually a sketch of a sim holding Rue as a baby as well. It's really, really pretty. I should have marked it, but there it is.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah, one of my best friends drew that. And she's just like, I just threw this together. Does this work? It was like in 10 minutes. I was like, you are seriously so talented.
Wow.
Anyway, but no, so Naomi is probably one of my favorite characters that's very much behind the scenes. And if you do get the exclusive edition, there are actually letters between a sim, Rue's father, and Naomi in the back of the book.
Okay,
so,
cool. Yeah.
But yes, so we only have a few minutes left. So before we answer the last question, I just want to make sure I thank everyone for coming and hanging out. Be sure you get your exclusive edition from Barnes & Noble. And make sure you have all of the In the Ashes series. If you do not, you are missing out. And we can wrap up, if you like, with, can you recommend some reads for those who loved our books? And if you want to go first, I'll go last.
Yeah, so if you loved our books, I'm like looking, okay, Sky Hunter by Marie Lu is a fabulous book. I think that I recommend it all the time, and I know I recommend it all the time, but it's just so good. I think if you want an adult book, This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal Mother is wonderful. That's also a really, really good one. And then let's see, what else? I'll tell you a book I'm really excited about, which is Adam Silvera's Infinity Reaper. It just came out yesterday. I cannot wait to read it. I'm so excited. I loved Infinity Sun. That came out last year. So Infinity Reaper is the other one. Highly recommend. series, and that one I haven't read yet, but I've heard amazing things about it, so can't wait.
So I'm going to take the opportunity to plug some books that are not out yet, just because I don't feel like they can ever get enough hype. If you love Wings of Ebony and Ember, now this is a contemporary fantasy one, but if you love magic, you're gonna love it. And then if you love, I love the darkness in your book, Sabaa, and I love how gritty my book is, and I feel like this book is the perfect blend of like dark and gritty. In a fast-paced novel. It's called Bad Witch Burning by Jessica Lewis.
Ooh.
And in fact, Sabaa, if I get my hands on an early copy, I will send it to you because it's one of the best books I've ever read in life. Like, and it's such a quick, fast-paced read too, which I know my Wings of Ebony readers loved. But it's about Cottrell, she basically like has this side hustle where she charges people money to talk to their like deceased loved ones, and then she accidentally raises one from the dead, and she realizes she can make more money that way.
Oh, that's
a great dead don't necessarily like being alive, and so it just gets really complex. And it's like, how far is Cottrell gonna go to sort of, you know, she's an inner city teen, poor family, and so she's really working this hard to like help her family financially, and so it is utterly brilliant. Light horror elements, but I mean, absolutely delicious. That's out in August.
That sounds great.
So that is my big book recommendation. And then I would say two other ones that are out this fall, if you love YA fantasy, particularly our books, would be Beasts of Prey by Ayanna Gray, whose cover was dropped by Oprah Magazine today. And
I have to look. I've been offline all day. I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait to look.
I got online just to catch it. It's gorgeous. The colors, oh my gosh. It's one of those covers where you're like, I want that because it's art. Like, I want it in my house just for the cover alone.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Would be Ace of Spades, which is a thriller. So it's not fantasy, but it has that thrilling tone. It has beautiful commentary, and it has like that delicious darkness that I think your book does so well. So those are my recommendations.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for letting me join you, and congratulations on Wings of Ebony. And everyone, like, please go, if you don't have this book, get it. If you have it, go give it to people who you love, because then they'll love you even more for it. It is a fantastic book. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Love you, Sabaa. Thank you.
Love you too. Bye.